Thank you all for coming out on a Sunday. Without further ado, let me just talk a little bit about commercialization and why it fits into the SBIR program. Do I change slides or swipe? Oh. Okay. All right, we'll figure this out. There we go. So this is kind of the definition, the official definition of commercialization, which is the process of developing products, processes, technologies, or services. Always remember services are possible too in this area. And the production and delivery, whether originating party or others, of the products, processes, technologies, and services for sale to or use by the federal government or commercial markets. All right, so that's the official thing. The other official thing is that the law now specifies that we have to take into account commercialization in the SBIR program. So we're looking at how best to do that, how best to meet these demands and requirements. And the SBA has also set a goal that the program to increase the private sector commercialization within the program. Okay, so why pick on commercialization? Where does it really fit in? It fits in because whenever NASA invests in a technology, it usually takes between 3 and 7 years for that technology to mature enough so that we actually use it in flight. And we use many technologies that have spun out of the SBIR program in our flights. And I'll show you some of that in my talk tomorrow. But there are lots and lots of success stories, but it takes time. Okay, so we're concerned that if we invest in technology, that technology will be available during that time, so we'll be able to fly it. So we don't want to invest in technology, get all excited about it. 7 years later, when we want to fly that, the company doesn't exist anymore. So we want to make sure that you succeed, that we can develop a partnership between these companies, the technology and NASA, so that there's a sustainable a pipeline or supply line of technology. Okay, so commercialization turns out to be a very, very good proxy, which indicates what kind of risk there is in our investments. So we use commercialization to kind of gauge your ability to maintain your technology over this kind of time frame. Also, by creating this environment where commercialization is important, it helps you succeed. Okay, so everybody really benefits by putting a spotlight on commercialization. Now we are innovative. Innovation is our middle name, so commercialization kind of fits in terms of reducing the risk to make sure we're still innovative. So how do we do commercialization? You can achieve that in many, many different ways. One of them is you can infuse your program into NASA. Now, this clearly is why we select these programs, because we believe that we'll be infusing these technologies. But if there really is a 7-year delay between when we're going to begin funding these technologies and fly them, there's probably also a significant delay in when you're going to be able to get a sustainable supply of revenue to maintain your company. So that's not always, because NASA wants it and NASA wants to invest in it, it's not always the full story in commercialization. We would also like to see post-phase 2 funding from another federal agency, or post-phase 2 funding as a commercial enterprise, and that could either be for more R&D, or you might be able to sell products to other companies. So there are lots of mechanisms that would convince us that you're going to be sustainable, and would convince yourselves that your company is going to be in business for quite a while. We want to see that. We want to make sure that happens. We want to incentivize you to do that. So I'm going to explain how we do that. This is the evaluation criteria for the awards, and this is right out of the solicitation. And basically, can I point with this thing? Maybe I can't. Anyway, it says in the solicitation that NASA will give consideration to the scientific and technical merit, the feasibility of the proposal, and the benefit of NASA interests. Okay, so this is really the bottom line umbrella on why we select these proposals. Always keep that in mind when you're writing your proposals to meet those needs. And then the 5 areas that we evaluate the proposal is scientific, technical merit, experience, qualifications of the facilities, effectiveness of the proposed work, 4, commercialization, commercial potential and feasibility. Up until this last year, all of these, and price reasonableness, all of these were factors in the selection. Starting in this selection that's coming up, and the last previous selection, commercial potential and feasibility is also a selection criteria in phase 2. Okay, we're not going to hurt you in phase 1, but we want you to start thinking about it in phase 1 because it's going to start counting in phase 2. Okay. Point to the right thing here. Okay. All right, so all acceptable phase 2 SBIR and STTR, and in fact the CCRPP proposals as well, are reviewed by a committee of outside consultants. Okay, we run this review, and we select people with a very, very interesting portfolio of experience. These people have started companies. These people have vetted companies. We have people who have invested in companies, venture capitalists, people from a wide variety of both NASA and external NASA areas. They have very, very wide-ranging expertise. I often joke about being in the room with these guys. It's the room you want to be in during the apocalypse because it's kind of the human version of Wikipedia. Almost any topic you can imagine, there's somebody who's an expert in these areas. I brought my son in there a few days ago. We had a review, and I just jokingly said, you know, suppose you wanted to cook a squirrel. And one of them raised their hand and said, I'd cook the squirrel. And another one raised their hand and said, I know how to prepare a squirrel. So it's just, it's mind-boggling how much information there is in this room. But what we do is we have all of the proposals reviewed by at least 2 reviewers. They agree on the review. If they don't agree on the review, then we discuss this among the entire committee because it's usually a lesson learned of some peculiar or particular aspect of these companies that we all learn from. So we've been doing this for many years, and we've developed this corporate knowledge. Has anyone here gotten to the phase 2? Has anyone here gotten a review from the commercial review, gotten feedback? Okay, we're interested. The committee asked me to ask you to give them feedback on their feedback because we want to know, we want to continue to improve that. Because bottom line is there are 2 reasons we do this review. Okay, one of them is, and the instructions I give this committee is, write your review as if you're talking to the CEO of the company. Okay? We want their collective expertise and the time they spend on this proposal to come back to you with recommendations on what you did good, what you did bad, how to improve. If they've got specific suggestions on people you should talk to or things you should do, we'll write that in the review. So come talk to me and let me know if the review is valuable or if there's something else you'd like from it. Because, like I said, this is an important resource, so we want to get that information back to you. So that's really one of the prime reasons we do this review, is to provide you with that kind of help and information. The second reason is it's a metric to NASA. It's a metric to NASA on what the risk is of investing in this company. Okay, so we conduct this evaluation. We give a bottom line review, and that tells us a little bit about what. How sustainable this company is, how good their commercialization plan is. And I have to tell you, we have lots and lots of different companies that provide these things. We have and we recognize that there's a wide variety of companies. There are lots of lifestyle companies. It's 3 aerospace engineers who retired. They work out of a garage. They do this for fun. They just have a blast doing it. And lo and behold, they won an award. You know, if NASA really wants the technology, we'll invest in it. Okay. And the commercialization is not going to really hurt you that much. But we'd like those guys to at least think about commercialization because, you know, if we really want to fly this technology, we would like you guys to be around or gals, really like to be around in 5 or 7 years. So we'd like you to understand if there's a market out there for this. Okay. Other situations we have companies that are really, really strong SBIR companies. You recognize the names. NASA invests several proposals, funds several proposals a year with these companies, and they think they're so good and so strong that they don't put in a commercialization plan, and they get dinged. And people are surprised. How can ABC company get a below average commercialization rating? Everybody knows they're really great. Well, our reviewers don't know you're really great unless you provide that information, which means the financials, which means the plan, which means addressable market. So in the past, that didn't really hurt them. In the future now, from now forward, it could potentially hurt you. It could potentially hurt you to the tune of about 5% which is what we're including in the score. About 5% of that score now is going to be dependent on your commercialization review. Okay. Where do I point this to? All right, okay, there we go. So the ability of a company to commercialize is really based on several factors, okay? Really three big umbrella factors. One of them is the ability to understand the internal and external marketplace, okay? And from that, you know, you really want to understand market segmentation and things like the competitive landscapes and the barriers to entry, okay? So you really want to understand what is the market for what I have out there. Second is, you need to put together a plan to address that market, okay? The ability to create a viable plan and address and penetrate that market, and what we look at there is the pro forma revenues of the company. And the third thing is, have a market. Is there a market out there? Do I have a plan to address the market? And the third thing is, do I have the capability of exercising that plan, okay? And that really depends on the capitalization of the company, the staffing, previous experience, cash flow and balance sheets. And, you know, we ask for financial statements in these things. And we really, the committee really does take these things seriously in evaluating these particular aspects. So what does it mean to get a high commercial score? I'll have questions at the end. A high commercial score really means that you've done all three of these things. There are three windows you've got to navigate through. You've addressed the market, you've gotten a good score that way, you've created a plan, and it's a good, well thought out plan, and two, you have the capability of addressing that plan, okay? You get through all three of those, you get a good score. We look for, you know, is there a fatal flaw? If there's a fatal flaw, we're gonna tell you that. We're gonna give you that in the feedback. It's not going to potentially kill you, but again, you're risking 5% of your score. In general, you know, we looked at the sensitivity of these things. You know, as a scientist, I love doing these kinds of things. It's not going to hurt a lot of people, but there will be some people who could be put below the threshold of being selectable if you don't pay attention to this. If you pay attention to this, you'll be okay.
Can we wait 5 more minutes?
Yeah, just we'll get to you.
Hold back. Please only use the arrows on the.
I'm using the arrows and I'm stabbing at the air.
Still freezing. Okay.
Did I just skip over a slide? Let me go back. Where do I point this to? Is it over there? I'm waving this around like a magic wand, but it's not doing anything. All right. All right. So let me just say the commercial scores. We have noticed that there's been improvement since we've been giving out this feedback, and a really noticeable improvement in the kinds of commercial reviews that companies have been getting. So that's a very good sign. If that continues, then you know the beatings will stop when morale improves, and so we don't have to really penalize you. But what we're really trying to do is incentivize commercialization, and that's why we're counting this as 5% of the score. But it seems to be working, and that's good. NASA could increase the weighting in the future. We hope we don't have to do that. We hope there'll be this self-actualizing. You don't want to gamble with 5% of it. Let's try that. All right. Any particular places to wave this? Or there we go.
I'll change that for you.
There we go.
I'll say next slide and they'll help you out.
All right, great.
Cool.
Okay, so commercialization reviews are based on the criteria in Part 7 of your of the proposals, and in Part 7 it consists of these 6 parts. And it's a market feasibility and competition, commercialization strategy, key management, production operations, financial planning, and intellectual property. And the next few slides I've taken right out of the solicitation just to give you an idea of what's in there. And can I have the next slide, please? There we go. So market feasibility, this is addressing the market. And these are the aspects, the target market, the innovation, an associated product or service, the competitive advantage, what do you do and for your product or service, the key potential customers, including NASA, what missions. Remember, one of the key criteria is a benefit and interest to NASA. So you want to specify this. Always specify in your proposal anyway. Projected market size. Be a little careful here. Some people say, well, I make a battery and the battery market is, $100 billion. And if I can get 10% of it, that's $10 billion. Be realistic. But anyway, think about it. It's some companies don't even think about these things, and that's what we want to do. We want to get you thinking about these things. Projected time in the market, anticipated competition. What are the alternative technologies? We want you to think a little bit about who else is out there competing with you. Next slide. Next slide is commercialization strategy and relevance. Okay, so that you've addressed the market. Now we want to develop a plan. You present a commercialization strategy for the innovation, associated product and services. What is the infusion into NASA? What is the where NASA is going to use it? What is the time scale for that? If that time scale is good enough, then you might have a commercialization plan that is just based on NASA. If it's not, then you want to augment this with the commercialization plan that goes outside of NASA, if you can. Okay, do the best job you can in this. You get credit for trying really hard. I think it's really important that, and people recognize that sometimes you don't have that full up potential market right away. But if you're at least in the mode of thinking about the plan and addressing these areas, then eventually you'll get there. And that's a quote right from my commercialization committee. They understand that. So key management, that's the other area. You want to understand what the skills and accomplishments of the key committee is in the organization structure, etc. Okay, next slide. Production operations, again, this addresses to the viability of the company. Plans for obtaining necessary physical resources if those are necessary. Financial planning is really important. Okay, this is the area that lots of companies falter on their commercialization plan because they don't provide the information. It's really important to the reviewers to understand the full-up financial status of a company. It's important for them to understand, well, this company didn't make a profit the last 2 years, but there's a one-time a correction to that, and that mitigates a lot of concerns and problems. So provide that evidence. Make sure you include the financial statements in your Part 7. Next slide. Intellectual property is the last thing. You want to understand how you're going to secure intellectual property, whether it's going to be trade secrets or patents or whatever. Just address that. Again, we want to understand that you've been thinking about these things. And a viable company that can do a good commercialization job would think about these things. Next slide. There are areas, now you don't have to do this alone. There are areas that can help. And someone mentioned before, well, let me mention this one first. Commercialization Technical Assistance is a program that we have that if you get through Phase 2 and you have a Phase 2 award, you can ask for an extra $5,000. It doesn't come out of your award. It's extra money. It's surprising that only about a third of the companies ask for this, but you need to spend this on developing a commercialization plan and a commercialization reducing risk for commercialization. So it's money that's available. There are entities out there that can help you do this, and you can spend the money on. So be aware that that's there. The other area is in the next slide. It's I-Cores. There we go. We've heard about this before. I think Jen brought this up, and this is an area where you can start interviewing people. This is a little harder to get, but it's more money, and you'll learn more. It's like a boot camp. It's a very, very rigorous program, and if you get through the program, you'll really have a much better feeling for what that outside market is, because you'll have to interview at the very minimum 30 other people. You'll run out of friends and family before you get to that 30, and you really have to do a job on this thing. And then it's competitive, and we gave out 7 awards in this last go-around. And for SBIR, it's $35K. For STTR, which actually you have to view 100 people in that one, that's $50K. So it's a significant amount of funding that really help you get on the really strong path to commercialization. So again, to kind of summarize, this commercialization is twofold purpose. The overall purpose is to help you succeed. And we do that by incentivizing commercialization, by creating this 5% requirement for selecting proposals. And we give you the feedback addressed to you to try to help you commercialize, and we give the rest of the feedback to NASA, which gives them a feeling for the risk of investing in that company. So next slide. I teach a class in proposal writing, so I couldn't help giving you proposal writing advice. So to that end, I want to say that proposal writing, the process doesn't begin when you get the solicitation. By then it's too late. It begins right now. And the fact that you're in this room, or you're listening to this, or you're going to be reading about it later, is a plus for you. Okay, it means that you've really started the work before the solicitation is out, and that's really, really important. And because winning a proposal is really a long-term process. Okay, and occasionally, unfortunately, it takes more than a year. Sometimes it takes losing a proposal in order to get the visibility at NASA and to also get the experience of writing and losing a proposal and getting the feedback to write a much better proposal. Because you've lost a proposal doesn't mean all is over. Many companies succeed on their second or third tries or even fourth tries. So it's a long-term process, but you can help us. You can help us by interacting with the community. The fact that you're here, and I noticed that I've been buttonholed quite a bit. That's okay. That's good. That's what we're here for. So help us write the subtopic descriptions by letting us know what kind of capabilities you have. Remember, we're trying to match what we want with what you can provide, okay? And the resources of SBIR are somewhat limited, so we want to be able to make that impedance match. So let us know what you have. Let us help us in writing and asking for the right things. And again, find out how you can benefit NASA. That's really one of the important things. Read the solicitation carefully, okay? The people who win will be the people who've read the solicitation carefully, have addressed the issues in the solicitation. Just because you did it last year doesn't mean it's going to be the same. It does change, and don't make the mistake of thinking you know what's in there without actually checking. Okay? Provide all the required information. Please take Part 7 seriously. Please provide the financial information. It'll help you immeasurably. Explain early and explain concisely how your effort will benefit NASA. Okay, that's the bottom line we're looking for. If it's up there in the executive summary, if it's there in the abstract, it makes life much easier in categorizing what your technology is and where it's going to fit in. And finally, just last piece of advice: you'll never get that feeling that I'm finished writing the proposal. You just run out of time and submit it. So that's a very common thing. So don't worry about it. And to that end, thank you. I'll take questions. You had the first question?
Would you like?
Yeah, so I just want to delineate between phase 2 and phase 3 information required for commercialization section. If you go back a number of slides, maybe 6 or 7. All right, yeah, forget going back. But okay, all right, that's easy enough. Keep going. Yeah. Keep going. Yeah, okay, go back, go for it. Yeah, that's the one.
Okay.
It says ability. So are you talking about here phase 2 or phase 3?
This is phase 2.
Phase 2, okay.
Yeah.
So while you're finishing up this phase 1, you're preparing a phase 2 proposal. Does NASA do the extension, the option in phase 1? Phase 1 option? Phase 1 followed by an option? No, okay.
There's no phase 1
Go
option.
straight to phase 2. Okay, so while you're finishing up your phase 1, you're now required to put this stuff together. And I look at capitalization, staff, and cash flow balance.
Yeah, you don't have to do this for phase 1.
For phase 2. For phase 2.
You do this for phase 2.
Yeah.
So once you start thinking about it at phase 1.
Yeah. So if you're finishing up your 6-month project for $125K, while you're doing that, you're preparing this proposal for phase 2 to now articulate these things. They're engineers, they're organizations here, one guy in his living room, and, larger organizations made up to 500 people. And so for the guy in his living room, who's really technically smart and quite capable, how does he address this without some additional assistance? Because he's finishing up his phase 1, and then he's now required to figure out staffing. well, especially cash flow and balance sheet. He won't. And if he just started, I mean, I've been through this multiple times, but I'm not the guy in the living room, one person. But I mean, I can see the difficulty for others, whereby, you know, for them to predict cash flow.
The bottom line is you do the best you can.
Yeah.
Okay. If NASA really wants the technology, it's not going to hurt you that badly. But we want you to start thinking about these things. Okay. It's important if you want to succeed and you want to be there when NASA needs the technology. So it's you know, you do the best you can, and if you're a one-man operation, that's recognized. If you're a company with several hundred employees, then a little bit more is expected of you. Yeah.
Hi. You alluded to how some technologies and the products of SBIRs may be of great interest to NASA, but maybe you're not going to have, it might be used on the space station, but not on your store shelf, perhaps. Your review committee, your commercialization review committee, are these made up exclusively of people outside the agency?
No.
And so do they understand the market pull that we get sometimes from NASA?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. You know, they understand that, you know, many of these, you know, they see the results of the reviews. They understand that that these are many of these areas where NASA really wants it. Okay, so they're going to look at every possibility to make sure that you know, what can this company do in order for them to be viable. So
they see the technical reviews.
They don't see the technical reviews, but they're smart guys. They understand, you know, a lot of these things. They're done concurrently with the technical reviews, so they all get done kind of at the same time.
Thank you.
Two questions. NASA doesn't have a pre-solicitation period where you know what the topics are going to be for this year.
Right.
When do we find out which of the topics from last year are going to still be in this solicitation?
Well, you know, if you look at the last couple of solicitations, things don't change very much in some directorates. They change a little bit more in others. I would look at that to kind of get a feeling for how things change. You know, I come from SMD. They don't change very much in SMD. It's fairly stable number of subtopics. We do rotate some in and out. But, you know, one of the things you can do now is let us know what's interesting. You know, we're going to give you a kind of a list of what our needs are, our problems. And, you know, we're, at least at SMD, and I'll talk about this tomorrow, but, you know, we're out for solving problems. We don't want to, you know, we're not pointing to a technology to say, I have to have this technology. No, I have to solve this problem. If you can solve it with low tech or high tech or any tech, we're interested. You know, innovation is what we want to do. So we want to just make sure we can capture that.
Thank you. One follow-up was, could you speak about the importance of letters of support from large prime contractors, and pretty much have to have one to have any chance?
I would say you have to have one. They're looked at. They're important. They're one aspect of this commercialization. But it's not going to make or break you.
In your proposals, how about putting a video in?
Pardon?
Putting a video in, describing it. Sort of 36 pages of nonsense, 36 pages of documentation in triplicate. Put a video in. Keep it short and succinct.
Video in for the solicitation?
Yeah, with a proposal.
You know, sometime we'll do that. We'll get our Hollywood people to help us. All right, I am out of time. But I'm around, so, you know.
I want to clarify on the letters of support question real quick, just to make sure that everybody understands that. So we do not evaluate letters of support. So if you guys submit letters of support from companies, those take up part of your page limit. We don't evaluate those. So in the commercialization plan, when you guys are talking about addressable market and identifying potential buyers, those kinds of things are important to describe who your potential other customers are. But unlike DoD, where you submit like a bunch of letters from prime contractors that say we're interested in being a customer on this signed X, those are not evaluated by us. So but they eat into your page limit. Just want to make sure everybody understands that.